Welcome to Unlocked channel.
Welcome to the Deep Dive. This is where we take complex topics, cut through all the noise, and really hand you those potent nuggets of insight. We want to make you instantly better informed.
Exactly.
And today, we're doing something a bit different, actually. It's tailor-made for many of you who might be preparing for, well, a pretty significant milestone.
That's right. We've heard from you, our listener, who's an IELTS test taker, and they've shared a writing task 2 prompt. This one's straight from Cambridge 19, test 2.
Okay.
And it's a great example, really, of the kind of current debate you could face in the exam.
All right, let's break this down then. The prompt is, the working week should be shorter, and workers should have a longer weekend. Do you agree or disagree?
Mm-hmm.
Now, our mission today isn't just to, tell you how to answer this for a top score. We want to actually show you the kind of rich, well-supported stuff a professional would bring.
Yeah, drawing on the kind of ideas and arguments you'd find in real-world discussions about this.
Think of it like a double win, maybe. You get a deep dive into the whole 4-day work week idea, and you see how to structure those insights for a really high-scoring IELTS response.
What's really key here, I think, is that a top-tier response isn't just about, stating your opinion and leaving it there.
Right.
It's about showing you understand the nuances, supporting your points with solid reasons, clear explanations, and crucially compelling examples.
The RE framework you mentioned.
Exactly. RE reasons, explanations, examples. We'll apply it directly here. It's how you take an idea from just being a statement to something fully developed.
Okay, great. So let's dive right into the debate then. When you get a prompt like this, agree or disagree, you've got to quickly come up with strong arguments for both sides.
Absolutely.
Let's start with the agree side. Why should the working week be shorter? Maybe a 4-day week. And why would a longer weekend be good for workers?
Okay. So when you're building that agree argument, probably the most prominent reason, the one you see a lot in recent studies, is improved employee well-being and mental health.
Okay, well-being. Makes sense.
And the explanation is pretty straightforward, really. A shorter, maybe more condensed work week, say 4 days, it just gives employees more personal time.
Right, that extra day off.
Yeah, that extra downtime, that longer weekend. It allows for better rest, it can reduce stress levels significantly, and it gives people more opportunities for hobbies, family, exercise.
Yeah.
Life outside work.
That seems pretty compelling. So it's less about just working fewer hours and more about achieving a better balance, leading to healthier people overall.
Precisely. And we do have concrete examples to back this up.
Like what?
Well, think about those pilot programs in Iceland. They were widely reported as a huge success. Participants reported much lower stress and burnout rates, and importantly, without productivity really dropping. And there are company examples, too, like Perpetual Guardian in New Zealand. They famously went to a 4-day week and saw a big jump in their employee well-being scores. It really highlights how vital that extra day can be for just psychological recovery.
That's a really strong point. Okay, beyond well-being, what's another major argument for cutting the working week?
Another really interesting one, and maybe a bit counterintuitive at first, is enhanced productivity and efficiency.
Right, you hear this one sometimes. How does that work?
Well, the explanation goes something like this. Employees, knowing they have fewer days or hours, tend to become more focused, more disciplined during their work time.
Oh.
That longer weekend hanging there acts as a pretty strong motivator. So they might prioritize tasks better, cut down on time-wasting stuff, just be more intentional with the hours they do have.
So it's that quality over quantity idea again. You're
Yeah.
saying people might actually get more done in less time because they're more switched on.
That's the theory, yeah. And there's some evidence. For example, Microsoft Japan ran an experiment with a 4-day week a while back. They reported something like a 40% boost in productivity.
40%? Wow.
Yeah, pretty staggering. The idea is that reduced hours can lead to a workforce that's more refreshed, more engaged, maybe less prone to making errors, and even more innovative. Kind of a fundamental shift away from just measuring productivity by hours clocked in.
That is genuinely surprising, I think, for a lot of people.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, are there any, bigger picture benefits? Societal? Maybe even environmental?
Yes, definitely. A third important reason you could argue for a shorter week is reduced environmental impact and perhaps less traffic congestion.
How so?
The explanation is fairly direct. Fewer commuting days means fewer cars on the road, which directly translates to a drop in carbon emissions.
Right, the commute.
And less time spent commuting, plus maybe fewer days needing the office lights and heating on full blast, means lower energy consumption overall.
So it could be good for people, good for business, potentially, and good for the planet. That's a neat way to connect this idea to, well, a much bigger global issue.
Exactly. You could point to examples like, well, what we saw during the pandemic. Cities where remote work suddenly became widespread, or even just fewer days in the office, they saw noticeable dips in air pollution and traffic jams. So this model kind of aligns with building a more sustainable future, moving away from the traditional 5 days in the office grind.
Okay, wow. We've definitely built up a strong case for the agree side there.
Yeah.
But like you said, every coin has two sides.
Mm-hmm.
What about the counter-arguments? For people who disagree with shortening the week, what are their big concerns? This is where it gets tricky, right? For businesses, for the economy.
Absolutely. And for a balanced IELTS essay, showing you understand the opposing view is crucial. So on the disagree side, one major reason is the potential negative impact on economic output and particularly service industries.
Okay, explain that.
Well, the thinking is, for many sectors, especially those that rely on continuous customer service or maybe production lines that need to keep running, just cutting hours, could lead to a direct drop in output. Or maybe services become less accessible.
Yeah, I can see that. Like, how would a hospital manage?
Exactly. It's hard to imagine a hospital or maybe emergency services operating as effectively with fewer staff days per week without major adjustments.
That's a really valid point. You can't just universally slash hours without consequences, especially where consistent availability is key. What kind of examples bring this home?
Well, think about retail stores, maybe restaurants or healthcare providers, as you said. If staff work fewer days, businesses might face a tough choice. Hire more people to cover the same operating hours, which increases labor costs.
Which could mean higher prices for us, the consumers.
Potentially. Or maybe reduce profitability for the business. An example could be a small local shop, maybe a family-run restaurant, struggling to stay open the same number of hours if all their staff move to a 4-day week. It might mean shorter opening times or longer queues for customers.
Yeah, that really highlights the practical hurdles.
And
Okay, what's another big worry from the disagree camp?
another strong counter-argument revolves around the challenges in implementation and just maintaining competitiveness.
Meaning?
The explanation here is that a universal shift isn't necessarily feasible or even desirable for all industries or all types of jobs. Some roles genuinely need someone on site 5 days a week, or maybe the workload just can't realistically be squeezed into fewer days without quality suffering.
Right.
And then there's the competition angle. If only some companies or maybe only some countries adopt a shorter week, it could put them at a disadvantage compared to those sticking to a traditional schedule, especially in a global market.
So it's definitely not a one-size-fits-all solution. And trying to force it could create real problems, maybe even hurt innovation if businesses are constantly struggling just to adapt.
Precisely. Think about, say, the manufacturing sector, where production lines might need to run nonstop, or certain professional services lawyers, consultants, where client deadlines are often tight and demanding.
Yeah.
Companies in fields like that might find it incredibly difficult to implement a 4-day week without either cutting back on what they produce or achieve, or, ironically, expecting employees to cram 5 days worth of intense work into 4, which could actually increase stress.
That's the opposite of the well-being argument.
Exactly. An example could be a global tech company trying to manage projects across different time zones. If one team moves to fewer working days, it could seriously disrupt the workflow and collaboration for everyone else involved.
Okay, that makes a lot of sense too. Is there a final point on the disagree side? Maybe something about the nature of work itself?
Yes, there is. A third reason someone might disagree could be framed around the potential erosion of work ethic or maybe missed opportunities for professional development.
How so? Explain that one.
Well, the explanation is that for some people, maybe even many, work isn't just about earning money. It's also a source of identity, purpose, and a place for continuous learning and growth.
Right.
A shorter week, especially if it means packing more into fewer, more intense days, could potentially limit those chances for informal learning, spontaneous collaboration, mentoring moments that often happen in a consistent 5-day environment.
Interesting.
It might even encourage a sort of race to the finish line mentality each day rather than a focus on depth, quality, and maybe those unplanned creative sparks.
So it's less about the raw hours worked and more about the potential loss of that, sort of fuller engagement and growth that some people get from being more consistently present at work.
That's the argument, yes. For example, think about highly collaborative fields like scientific research or maybe creative industries like design or advertising. Those spontaneous chats by the coffee machine, the extended brainstorming sessions, that continuous presence that often leads to breakthroughs.
Yeah.
Reducing the working week might, perhaps inadvertently, cut down on those crucial interactions, which could impact long-term innovation and growth, both for the individuals and the organization as a whole. It raises a fair question. Does less time at work always translate to more overall development for everyone?
Wow, okay. We have really unpacked some compelling points on both sides of this.
Okay.
Agree, disagree, lots to think about.
Ultimately.
But okay, even with the best ideas in the world, we know that for IELTS, the language you use is absolutely crucial,
Yeah.
especially if you're aiming for those higher band scores.
Absolutely paramount.
So let's talk about some useful collocations, those word partnerships that can really elevate your writing on this topic, help you express these points with more impact and sophistication.
Yes, using useful collocations well is a fantastic way to boost your lexical resource score. It shows you have a deeper, more natural control of English. These aren't just single words, they're those combinations that just sound right to a native speaker.
Right.
So for this topic, you'd want to think about terms related to productivity. Instead of just make more stuff, you could use phrases like boost productivity, enhance efficiency, or increase output.
Got it. So rather than saying, I don't know, make workers do more, maybe aim for foster greater productivity.
Exactly. And when you're talking about well-being, instead of just make people feel good, try improve mental health, reduce stress levels, alleviate burnout, or the classic promote work-life balance.
Okay, those sound much more precise.
They are. And for the economic side, think about terms like stimulate economic growth on one side, or maybe bear the financial burden, or face labor shortages on the other. Using these specific natural combinations makes your writing flow better and sound much more sophisticated. It shows you really grasp the nuances.
That's incredibly helpful advice. It's about sounding like you genuinely understand the topic in English, not just, hitting a word count or using basic vocabulary.
Precisely.
Okay, so we have the arguments, the RE structure, the collocations. Now, for everyone listening who's actually taking the IELTS test, how do you make sure all this great information, the reasons, explanations, examples, the language actually sticks? Especially when you're under pressure on exam day.
Yeah, that's the million-dollar question, isn't it? How do you internalize all this effectively? Well, these tips to memorize are really about strategic ways to recall and apply everything efficiently. One really effective method is mind mapping.
Okay, mind mapping. How does that work here?
You visually connect your central topic, shorter working week, to its main branches. Agree and disagree. Then, under each branch, you list your key reasons. Under each reason, jot down the explanation, and then link specific examples to that.
Ah, so you're visually laying out that REE structure we talked about.
Exactly. It creates a visual memory aid that's usually much more effective for recall than just reading lists of points.
Okay, that makes sense. What else?
Another really crucial tip is using active recall and spaced repetition. Don't just passively reread your notes.
Right.
After you've studied a section, close the book, put the notes away, and try to explain the points out loud. To yourself, to a friend, even just to the wall. Or write them down purely from memory.
Testing yourself, basically.
Yes, and then revisit those same points after maybe a few hours, then again the next day, then maybe a week later. This forces your brain to actively retrieve the information, which really strengthens the memory trace. Yeah. You could even use simple flashcards for remembering those useful collocations.
Okay, active recall, spaced repetition, and finally, how do you pull it all together for the actual test environment?
The ultimate tip has to be timed essay practice. Once you feel like you've got a good handle on the arguments and the language for a topic like this, you absolutely have to practice writing full essays.
Under exam conditions.
Yes, under timed conditions. Use similar prompts. This does two things. It helps you practice recalling the information quickly, but more importantly, it forces you to apply it coherently, structure your argument logically, and manage your time. It shows you exactly where your weaknesses are and how well your brainstorming actually translates into a finished essay. These techniques are vital. They ensure your deep dive preparation actually pays off with a high score.
Right. So what does all this mean for you, the listener, and your writing?
Well, by systematically tackling your IELTS Task 2 topics with this kind of detailed brainstorming, really focusing on strong reasons, clear explanations, solid examples for both sides, and then boosting your language with those precise collocations, you're really setting yourself up for a high-scoring response. It's about building a convincing, well-supported argument from the ground up, not just sort of scattering ideas onto the page. Exactly. And, beyond just the exam, this analytical approach, thinking through reasons, explanations, examples, considering counterarguments, it really encourages critical thinking about complex issues in general. That's a valuable skill way beyond IELTS.
That's true.
Think about how much stronger any position you take becomes when you truly understand both sides of an argument and can back it up with evidence. It makes you a more informed, more articulate person in any discussion, really.
Absolutely. Well, that's all we have time for in today's deep dive. We really hope this exploration into the shorter working week debate has armed you with some powerful ideas for your IELTS preparation.
And maybe given you some interesting things to think about regarding the future of how we work.
Indeed. Thanks so much for listening and for your time today. If you found this content helpful, if you enjoyed the deep dive, please do remember to hit that subscribe button for the June Unlocked channel.
We'd appreciate it.
We look forward to unraveling more insights with you in our next deep dive.
喜欢我你就订阅我，谢谢大家。